going on, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of the Orange Crush podcast, presented by Newton Scott and Associates and Chick-fil-A. Be the champion of your tailgate today. Go grab yourself a chicken biscuit. You deserve it. You really do.
I
It's been a
do.
tough Tuesday. At the time of
Yeah.
recording this, it is Tuesday. David, the man that loves sweet tea, as he puts in his little bio. You know, sometimes I associate open house with those two terrifying words when I was a little kid, which meant we were a few days away from school. And I did not want to go back because I preferred summertime and hanging out with friends, all that good stuff. Open house for us means we're closer to football season, and that's a fantastic thing. It wasn't just meet the teacher. It was meet the teacher, meet the substitutes, meet the janitor, meet the administrator. It was meet everybody. Open house. Quick first thoughts before we dive into it.
I thought it was great. I think, you kind of think that everybody takes their cue from the head man, right? Dabo comes into the media room there in the Smart Family Media Center, acts like he's taking a picture of us, says he's going to join Twitter today and post the picture of us to Twitter. Then he goes on this, long story about mistaking Florida Georgia Line singer Brian Kelly with an EY with Brian Kelly, the coach of LSU. Great story, had everybody laugh. And then told a Charlie's Angels, story with another youngster that asked a question. He was on a roll today. And it's pretty obvious from talking to him, coaches, everybody's really relaxed, feeling good. I think they feel like this is a good football team. And, if everything falls right, it could be a pretty special season.
Yeah, I haven't seen, and I think we'll get into like the relax and the sort of the nature of Dabo. But man, it felt like he came in there was a smile on his face, and it really didn't drop for about 45 minutes to an hour that he usually gives with us on this July opener. I don't think it's necessarily a thing where it's relaxed to a fault. I just think that, and we had said this on the drive home, that it feels like the house is in order. Everything kind of is taken care of heading into the season. There's no major issues with this group. The staff is at a really high pace. We'll talk about sort of that with the different conversations. But overall, that's as relaxed as I've seen Dabo probably this is my going to be my fourth full season doing this. I've never seen him like that. He was cracking jokes, telling stories. My man was up there, and it might as well have been a comedy show.
Well, I love what you said there about the house being in order. And, there's no real personnel concerns. He touched on punter and said, hey, if I'm wrong, you can write that I'm wrong. But I believe we've got the guys here that can do the job. He never considered going and getting a punter in the portal. But otherwise, feel like, he feels good about this roster. But I like what you said about the house in order and the coaching staff. We talked to a lot of guys today, and, one thing that I kept bringing up was this is almost like an all-star coaching staff. When you look at Garrett Riley, the success that he's had, when you look at Matt Luke, former head coach at Ole Miss, national champion at Georgia, you look at Tom Allin, who has had all kinds of success everywhere he's gone. You look at Lorenzo Ward, Whammy, who's now kind of like Dabo's assistant head coach. I think that's really his title. But he is Dabo's eyes and ears for the defense. And then you look over here, and you got Mike Houston, who won a national championship at James Madison less than a decade ago. On offense, you got John Grass, who had all that success at Jacksonville State, right? And you go, holy smokes, there's some pretty good coaches over here. And then you look at a guy like John Scott, who coached with the Detroit Lions. He basically recruited all the guys at Penn State that Tom Allen coached last year. He had T.J. Parker committed to Penn State before T.J. flipped to Clemson. John's been with the Lions. Tom Allen's son, with the Detroit Lions, been at Penn State. And you sit there and you look at it and you go, man, these are some great coaches. And it takes me back to kind of that fateful day when everything kind of went south for the Clemson coaching staff. When Tony Elliott leaves, he takes guys with him. Brent Venables leaves, he takes guys with him. And it was a lot of youth out there, right? And now it's a bunch of old guys who have experience. And Whammy Ward told me that he thinks Dabo was very intentional with that in bringing in a bunch of guys who have experience. And now, as the CEO, Will Sweeney was telling me, it's great being able to have this third level of seeing his dad. He's seen him as a coach's kid. He's seen him as a player. Now Will sees him as another coach. And he said, seeing my dad as the CEO of this great organization. And I think Dabo he's kind of letting guys do their own things. Dabo's got his hands with the offense. He's letting Whammy do the defense, and I think he feels pretty good about everything.
It feels like the adults are in the room almost, where you have these conversations like, all right, the adults are talking, like things are calmed down. And it's just sort of this through line. I think also with this roster as well, which we'll get into in other editions of this show, or when it comes to just sort of the continuity of being the theme of they're returning a lot of players. It's a veteran group. It sort of mirrors and parallels the coaching staff in that sense. And you had mentioned all the spots and successes. Talking to Mike Houston, he sort of paralleled it to like walks of life. You have so many people coming from so many different spots, him included, where it's whether you mentioned Ole Miss or Jacksonville State, James Madison. We could go on and on. The Detroit Lions. There's so many different experiences. There's so many different voices in the room. TCU with Garrett Riley, national championship experience, and so for a group that's trying to get back to that spot and has got that taste. That been a consistent theme over the spring. TJ Moore saying we got that first taste and now we're starving for more. And so this group is able to sort of navigate that. And it's a little bit easier when you've got an experienced coaching staff. There's going to be a long, grueling season ahead. You're going to need some voices alongside Sweeney to sort of parrot the message that he wants to deliver and direct. And so I think we saw a taste and a preview of that with Tom Allen in the spring of sort of the change in direction and the change in narrative of how things are going. And so the fall camp's going to be the fruition of that. So many talking points are almost over. Like the talking season's nearly done. We're going to see helmets and pads here real soon. But this
July 31st.
Yeah, it's 16 days from us recording this. That's exciting. It really is exciting. You could feel that energy. And I think it was very intentional that Sweeney let us talk to everybody today. I think it was a masterful move on his part. There's more ears, there's more eyes out there. Getting to relay what we've been talking about for the last several months this is a pretty darn good football team, and a lot more people should know.
I think it's going to be a good football team. And, there's obviously things that have to fall right. The injury news, Ari Watford and Jay Haynes, who had ACL tears. Dabo said, hey, they're not going to be full speed right at the beginning of camp, but they're going to be on a progression. But that's it. I mean, otherwise, this is a really healthy group. They held a lot of people out intentionally in the spring, got a lot of stuff cleaned up, and now you head into fall camp and you feel really good about everything. I think we saw that today. All of these coaches talking to them. Everybody's excited to be here. Everybody's excited to get going. All of these coaches who have kind of, and I didn't even mention, holy cow, Lonnie Galloway. Coached that Downs guy in North Carolina. He was pretty good, right? Lonnie Galloway talking to me about, the similarities between Dabo and Mac Brown and some of the differences and some of the programs he's been at. I mean, just great conversations. And if you love to talk football, man, today was it. With Will Gilchrist, the special teams coach, you had the conversation with Mike Houston, and a lot of those guys, man, just a fun day. And in 16 days, we get to see this all kind of put together and see how they'll do. Obviously, it won't even be in shells. It'll just be in helmets and shorts, and they'll have a couple of days, and then they'll go into shells. And then, the next week we'll go at some point into full pads, and we'll figure all this out. Players walking in and out kind of today. We didn't get to talk to them, but we get Antonio Williams, TJ Parker, Peter Woods, and Antonio Williams next week. Cade Klubnik, sorry. We get them next week at the ACC kickoff. It's a great time of year.
Yeah, you get that veteran presence too. And a lot was made with Sweeney and a couple others, depending on who you talk to, about Klubnik. And I'd love to just focus on this for a couple minutes here. I sat down with Taj Boyd for about 10 minutes, and we create a little bit of a pocket. Those who were there today, I hope Boyd will have appreciated. We created a mini huddle. We started something. It was really really fascinating to see. But I asked him just sort of about continuity and that being a theme of this group. We don't really see that in college football. There's a lot of movement. The transfer portal, we beat that point we beat it to death. But this was sort of the day to do that. And Boyd said something he eloquently described how Klubnik's journey sort of perfectly matches and mirrors this football team, and that they've been on the other side of this, where they've had a season where it's quickly been turned on them. You mentioned the Duke opener where they get walloped by Riley Leonard and co, and immediately it goes from super, super duper hype to super duper mess in the span of 4 hours, which is fascinating how things can quickly change. Or the Georgia opener, where things were kind of unsure, and that was more of a confirmation for some. And now you have this season where they can do no wrong this offseason, it feels like. And so Boyd was like, it's easy to sort of temper those expectations when you've been kicked in the face a little bit. You've had that other side. And last year was sort of that, especially in some of those games like SMU, Pittsburgh, for Klubnik specifically, where he sort of discovered he could put the team on his back and go to work, especially that playoff game against Texas, where a couple stops from maybe Klubnik putting together that masterclass into a victory. Maybe we will never know truly, but it's fascinating to see how all these different, wherever you look, it's so much positivity, but you got a couple coaches like maybe Boyd, Nick Eason in particular, was saying that we got to start putting the results on the field of what people have been writing about us, because talk is, as Tom Coughlin says, talk is cheap. Let's play the game. We'll get to do that here pretty soon. But David, so many pieces, and the names that you mentioned, Cade Klubnik, Peter Woods, Antonio Williams, TJ Parker, all four of them deciding to come back in various ways, whether that was the world we live in, signing deals, whatever it may be, NFL decisions. But those are the four kind of pillars in a sense of returning production on both sides. Your top wideout, your top quarterback, and your two pass rushers, all projected to be pretty highly picked in the NFL draft next year, coming to Charlotte to echo the messages that we're saying right now, but just a little bit better because they've been on the inside and grinding this out for months. Before we get back to this video, we'd like to thank the title sponsor for this podcast, Newton Scott and Associates. This team is headlined by Jeff Scott, former Clemson assistant coach and two-time national champion, as well as Eric Newton, a longtime local and trusted real estate partner. These two are teaming up to provide a first-class experience for all Clemson fans. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, or build in the upstate area of South Carolina, you can trust Newton Scott and Associates. Choose the same team that Clemson coaches are selecting when they're looking to buy, sell, or build, all the way from Tigertown to Lake Kiowee. For more information, you can find them at newtonscottsc.com or by calling the number 864-722-9062. That's 864-722-9062. Now, let's get back to the video.
Yeah, I like what you said about tempering the expectations. Dabo was asked about the defense, specifically that defensive line. How good can they be? Somebody wanting to compare them to the Power Rangers. You got to meet two of the Power Rangers today. Cleveland Farrell was in the background.
He did a little wave. It was sort of the comedic. You're going to watch on YouTube. You go out of frame and they pop in and just do a little wave. It was fun.
And you got to meet AB and spend a little bit of time with him there. Wanted to compare it to that group. Look, that group was amazing, and that group was deep. But Dabo says, if he wants to bring him down to earth, all he has to do is show him, the tape of the Texas game with the running back running wild. Quinn Ewers would come to the line. He'd look over there and see who was at defensive end, and he'd call, either an inside zone or an outside, zone run play to that side, and it was just chunks of yards. That's all you got to do is show him that. Peter Woods understands he was out of shape. He wasn't in shape. We talked about that today. Peter getting back in shape to where you can play more snaps. TJ Parker, really good, can get better. Will Helt has joined it. An interesting thing on Will Helt, by the way, talking to John Scott, he said go back and look at his tape with Purdue. He did it all out of a 2-point stance. He stood up a lot. So they're really having to kind of bring him into to playing with his hand in the dirt and doing a 3-point stance. It's a learning curve. And so these guys, they've won nothing. They understand that. These coaches will get them. They'll get them dialed in. If you don't think Nick Eason and Chris Rump said he has no starters. And then Dabo had that real funny, point there where somebody reminded him about Trevor Lawrence, saying Trevor Lawrence said on a podcast, that Dabo could make any team believe that they absolutely sucked. And, you get a feeling Dabo will have this team believing that they suck right out of the gate and, be able to motivate these guys.
Yeah, we got to have a way to, and this is going to be, if you guys follow on socials, I will be using the Dabo 2-second clip of saying you suck in various ways next year or this fall.
I've already texted it to like 40 of my friends, and I'm like, hey, I asked Dabo to send you a message.
It's golden. He just points to the camera, and I was like, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, Now this is the no context Dabo for no context Dabo. I've got a pic of him doing like a hand like cross thing, and he's like leaning over, like trying to do a funny pose. I mean, I've got Dabo. If you ever watch this, man, you've given me an arsenal to work with. I know you're going to be joining Twitter soon, so you're going to see all of that. But man, what a day for just material in general. And to credit Fax and Childress of the Roar for asking that question. Thank you for providing that. Way to
Yeah,
provide the memes.
yeah, and Thaxton playing as Georgia Tech defeated you as Clemson
Okay, we don't need to go.
28-26. I just want to bring that up. Anyway,
No.
but it's really good to kind of get in there and with a lot of the support staff and support coaches and talking to them, it was kind of more informal. Sure, they know we're recording them, but it's more conversation, guys talking ball. I told one assistant came in and he was like, are you going to interview me? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, I'm terrified. I've never done this before. And I'm like, look, it's just two guys talking football. Like, that's all you got to think of it as. Don't look, at a camera. Don't look at a recorder. And I thought all the guys did great. There was a lot of talk about Ian Shefflin today. And let me just say this. I felt really bad for Kyle Richardson because it feels like he's got a really good room, right? Like, he's got Olsen Pat Henry, who's coming along, Christian Mettenker, who's going to be really good, Logan Brooking, Josh Sapp, can't forget about him. Josh Sapp may be the most athletic tight end that we have. He just doesn't have a lot of the size, but he's worked hard. But, Kyle, somebody would walk off and somebody would walk back up and go, hey, I don't know if you've been asked this yet, but what about Ian Shefflin? And that person walk off and another person come up and go, hey, I don't know if you've been asked this yet, but let me ask you about Ian Shefflin. And you have to temper those expectations a little bit, because I was talking to Will Sweeney, and Will was saying, who's now working with the tight ends along with Andrew Shipman and Kyle Richardson, that they were kind of watching him out in camp. And by camp, I mean Dabo Sweeney's youth camps and the high school camp. And, they were trying to figure out, where do we start with him, because it's been 8 years since he's played any type of organized football. And basically it comes down to, how do you line up? What is your stance? It's almost like they have to treat him like he's in Pee Wee football or youth football. Here's how you put your feet. Here's where you put your hands. Here's how you line up. Here's how you ask the referee, am I on the line? Do you line up on the line of scrimmage? Do you line up off the line of scrimmage? He's got a big learning curve. And, and I understand it's a story and people want to ask about it. Don't expect a lot. If he winds up, as Dabo said, catching a touchdown pass in the national championship game, fantastic. I mean, that is a great story. But I think with Dabo, this is really a chance to give Ian a chance to build a base in another sport. As he said, he can go back and play basketball, but he thinks he's got all of the athletic ability and all the tools to play tight end. It's just going to take a while.
Right. And we've seen examples, and people will throw out certain names of these things happening. And maybe it does. We just don't know. We're just kind of erring on the side of realism, because that would be kind of it. Let me say this. If Ian Shefflin catches the game-winning touchdown in the national championship, go buy a lottery ticket ASAP, because that's just like, whoa. If you're a Clemson fan and that happens, like, that's no disrespect to Ian. Like, incredible athlete, really well contributor on the basketball side of things. It's going to take a long time. And it's funny, those drills that you see in fall camp, anyone that's sort of on those viewing periods at the beginning or that first day, I'll always never forget. I always find it kind of comical in a sense, because they're college receivers, but Grisham is always coaching them. I don't know if that's on purpose for us just not be able to see anything or what have you, but it's the stance drill where they're teaching them how to basically break off with the right foot. And I've always just talked it up to, like, they just don't want us to see much. But for those drills, you're going to have Ian Shefflin there, like, seriously taking mental notes, because he hasn't done this in a long time. So those stance drills, it's elementary to a TJ Moore or an Antonio Williams. But when we were doing Dabo Sweeney's high school camp, and you see Ian Shefflin to the side working with Dabo a little bit about his stance, like that's serious stuff right there. It's not, this is just busy work. This is just the opening practice thing to get us warmed up. Like, no, this is boot camp for Mr. Shefflin. So it's going to be, sorry for the little mini rant. We open up a can of worms every time we bring up the tight end for that room. But, man, Christian Bentancur going to be a special talent according to Sweeney too. That's a name I've been high on for a year.
Yeah.
Been waiting to see him on that field. But Yeah, there's so many different angles, and honestly, you and I could sit here for 2 hours and share stories from today. It was it, shame on you for bringing up this Facts and Children's loss in CFP 25. It was ridiculous.
I tell you
I,
what,
I'm,
I
I'm
can't wait to see with Ian Shefflin though. Let me go back to him for a second. Is fairly early in camp. Once they put the pads on, they'll go into what they call the Oklahoma drill. They call it the wind drill, the W drill, but that's where everybody lines up on side, and it is mano a mano. It is full speed going at each other, and I cannot wait to see Ian Shefflin take on like a TJ Parker or a Sammy Brown at full speed. It's one thing to post up that 6'9" guy from Latvia. And that's another thing to run into TJ Parker in the middle of a pile. And I can't wait to see how he responds to that. I think he's athletic enough. He's strong enough. You're just going to see how he responds. And I think it's going to be fun. And like you said, today was an absolutely amazing day. We conducted 40-something interviews. I think you and I were running around with a lot of the support guys doing a lot of stuff. A lot of videos out there. My wife, Nikki, she said she doesn't think anybody worked harder than TigerNet today. I agree with that. We probably had the most people there. Another, website that was there. One of their interns was interviewing Daquan Bowers and then got done with the interview and said, "I'm sorry, what's your name again?" And I'm like, how can you interview a guy if you don't know his name? It was a big day, and getting to talk to Daquan Bowers again, just about his journey. That's all going to be coming up. Kevin Kelly, Jordan Sorrells, Taj Boyd, you got great stuff from him. Mike Houston, you got good stuff from him. I got great stuff from Woody McCorvey, or Nikki did. John Scott was tremendous as always. Man, it's a lot of good stuff, including Chris Rumpf over there throwing out one-liners about midgets and circuses, and it was just there was a lot of laughter out there today. You got to play college football. I went into the water massage chair, and I did. I went in there for about 20 minutes into the water massage chair and came out feeling pretty doggone good.
Well, I'll also admit that I did play one-on-one basketball to 5 and got smoked in that as well. So, in terms of the
play?
I played Faxon. I mistakenly felt like I could just kind of shoot up a couple threes and call it a day. No. If he watches this, and to your credit, bud, hitting the Steph Curry, that was pretty demoralizing, given what your Warriors did to my Celtics a few years ago. But besides the point, very fun day, very active day. You and I both are, I think the right word is, and excited. You sort of make that feel, oh, it's like, sorry,
I'm juiced.
You're juiced. I mean, I'm ready to go for this. I've been ready to go for August 31st for a while. Today was that extra shot of like energy where you take like a energy drink, a Red Bull, for example. Never had coffee, never done energy drinks, but this is what I imagine it feel like to take one. And it's like for my football progress bar of the off season. It's just closer and closer and closer. And so I got to wait another 16 days for that to get an extra hit of that football progress bar. And then we're full in. And guys, on this podcast, expect a ton more stuff there. David, do we have any final notes before we wrap up this little quick hitter episode of our open house shenanigans?
No, just be looking for a lot of content coming your way. We're going to have all of the interviews coming out. We're going to be writing a lot of stories. And then, this time next week, we'll be in Charlotte for the ACC kickoff, getting ready for a big Wednesday. We've got Brad Brownell next Tuesday.
Yep.
So we get to talk a little bit of basketball. John Brittman gets a new contract Thursday around 1 p.m. when the Board of Trustees Compensation Committee meets. So there's still a lot of stuff on the calendar. Enjoy your summer. Go to the beach, but football's here.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. Guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Orange Crush podcast, or watching if you're on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, why not subscribe to the YouTube page for more content like this? But we'd like to also thank Newton Scott and Associates for their sponsorship, as well as Herb Tyler and Chick-fil-A. Once again, treat yourself. You guys deserve a chicken biscuit or some nuggets or some fries. I don't know what you like, but all of it's pretty good. If you ask me, you probably can find a Chick-fil-A cup in my house pretty consistently. Guys, thank you as always for tuning in. Subscribe for more. God bless y'all.